Hello, fourth grade readers. It's Mrs. Lamondo, and I'm back with you for our Fontes and Pinnell mini lesson of the day. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, let's present that. All right, here we have our next lesson of the day. So today we're going to listen to the book, Follow the Moon Home. Then we're going to take a look at the beginning of the book. There's a copyright page and dedications. In this book, there are 3 dedications. I'm going to ask you, after we listen to the story, why do you think there are 3?
Blue Bonnet Award winner nominee, Follow the Moon Home by Philip Kuste and Deborah Hopkinson. I always need help finding my way, especially in a new place. Before long, you'll feel right at home, Viv. I wasn't so sure. Welcome, Vivian, called Mr. J. You're just in time for fun. We're looking to solve a problem. I got out my pencil and bit my lip. I rode my bike all over town looking for a problem. Mostly, I just got lost. On Saturday, I took Samson and Luna for a run on the beach. Mostly they pulled me. Let's make a gigantic hole, I gasped, popping down. My big digger and my little digger sprang into action. Suddenly, it was raining sand. Looks like fun, but be sure to fill in that hole, said the man walking by. It's nesting season. I smoothed out the sand, and we all went to look. What do holes have to do with turtles? It's because of the babies, said the voice. I whirled to see a girl from school. I'm Clementine, she reminded me. Baby sea turtles need a clear path to the sea. Holes and sandcastles get in their ways. I didn't know we had sea turtles here, Samson pulled on the leash. Oh, we do. And look what happened to this baby, cried Clementine. Why were you going the wrong way, little one? Mr. J had told us to use our own eyes, so that night, Mom and I went back to the beach. As darkness fell, we could see bright lights winking on one by one along the shore. That's it, I said. The lights in the beach houses are the problem. Why is that, Mom asked. When baby turtles hatch, they follow the strongest light they see, I explained. So if they head away from the sea, they get dehydrated and die. My heart sank as I stared at the houses. There are so many. How can we ask all these people to turn off their lights? Most of these houses are vacation rentals, Mom said. That means new people come to stay every few days. You'd have to knock on doors every night. Clearly, I needed to help to solve this problem, and I knew just how to get it. On Monday morning, Clementine and I raised our hands first. We told the class that we learned and observed about the loggerhead sea turtles. The sea turtles are starting to hatch, I went on. To save the hatchlings, we need a whole class, the whole town to help. And that's how Lights Out for Loggerheads began. Our classroom began the Loggerhead Lab. First, we gathered lots of information. We read books, we visited the aquarium and the Sea Turtle Hospital. We asked someone from the South Carolina Marine Turtle Conservation Program to speak to our class. We all brainstormed solutions choosing the best ideas. Then we got to work. We made posters and delivered them all over town. We wrote fact sheets for all the vacation beach houses. To pay for the printing our flyers and posters, we held a bake sale. Andy, the coffee shop man, donated a whole pan of his famous granola. Happy to help. The editor promised to put my article in the community newspaper. Nice to have a new writer in town, she said. The printer gave us a discount for the loggerheads. Rebecca and Max learned how to spread the word on the internet. And Mr. J helped us write a press release. I was on TV as the class spokesperson. We invited volunteers from the SCUTE, the South Carolina United Turtle Enthusiasts, to a town meeting. When the big night arrived, the room was packed. The room buzzed with ideas. We talked about how to make our beach a great place for turtles, how to mark nests, run nightly patrols, what to do if the hatchlings get in trouble. At the end, we decided to form our own volunteer group. People cheered for our class. Mr. J beamed. I'm proud of you all. That was the best night ever. Until... On our last evening at summer school, we went on turtle patrol. Lots of parents came too. Everyone smiled as we watched the lights along the beach go out one by one. We had done it. Suddenly, a movement on the sand caught my eye. Over here, I whispered. We crept closer carefully to stay quiet. A crescent moon shone on the waves, and the sea glittered like silver. I made out first one, then two hatchlings. Soon the sand seemed to boil over with life. Tiny turtles, no more than 2 inches long, burst from the nest. We watched barely daring to really breathe. Would you know where to go? When they were off, scurrying over the sand and into the shimmering sea. We stood together smiling, silent with wonder. Then, just like the turtles, we followed the moon home.
All right, so that was a great book. So in this book, there are actually 3 dedications when you first open the book. Why do you think there are 3 different dedications? Some of the dedications are from the author and others are from the illustrator. Why do you think that Deborah Hopkinson dedicated the book to someone who helps sea turtles? Perhaps you're realizing maybe it was her inspiration for the book. Remember, dedications can be found typically right in the front of the book. I have the other side here. This one has an author's note, and we can see the dedication right here. As you are reading your books, check and see if there's a dedication. It is one feature of fiction and nonfiction text. Now let's take a look at Parrots Over Puerto Rico. First, we'll listen to the story, then we'll talk about the acknowledgements page, another feature of books that you may or may not know about.
Parrots Over Puerto Rico by Susan L. Roth and Cindy Trembore, collages by Susan L. Roth, and read by Mr. Alicea. Above the treetops of Puerto Rico flies a flock of parrots as green as their island home. If you look up from the forest, and you are very lucky, you might catch the bright blue flashes of their flight feathers and hear their harsh call. These are Puerto Rican parrots. They lived on this island for millions of years, and then they nearly vanished from the earth forever. This is their story. Long before people came to Puerto Rico, hundreds of thousands of parrots flew over the island and the smaller islands nearby. Iguaca. The parrots called as they looked for deep nesting holes in the tall trees. Down below, waves from the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean washed the island's white sand beaches. Delicate orchids and wide-spreading ferns, tiny tree frogs, K-pop trees bursting with seed pods, and big scaly iguanas covered the island. Iguaca. The parrots called as they flew to Sierra palm trees to eat their dark, bitter fruit. Around 5000 BCE, people came to the island in canoes from lands to the south. These people planted corn, yuca, sweet potatoes, peanuts, and pineapples. When they looked up, they saw the bright blue flashes of flight feathers. More groups of people came. The Taínos arrived around 800 CE. They hunted the parrots for food and kept them as pets. Taínos gave the parrots a name, Iguaca, after their harsh call. They gave the island a name too, Borican. Iguaca, Iguaca. The parrots called when hurricane winds blew down the old trees where they had their nests. After the hurricanes passed, the parrots flew through the treetops to find new nesting holes. Christopher Columbus sailed from Europe to Borican in 1493 and claimed the island for Spain. Soon Spanish settlers were planting crops on the island and building houses and schools with wood, bricks, and stone. Each time hurricanes destroyed their homes and schools, the settlers rebuilt them. The Spaniards called the parrots cotorras, and they gave the island a new name, Puerto Rico, rich port. In the treetops, the parrots searched for mates. The new pairs of parrots sat on branches, bowing, calling back and forth to each other, and fluffing their wings and tails. Each pair raised one family of chicks every year. Now people from many other parts of the world came to live in Puerto Rico. In 1513, Africans were brought to the island to toil as slaves under the hot sun in fields of sugarcane and other crops. More people came from Spain too, and they married Taínos and Africans. They all called themselves Boricuas, people of Borican, but they were still ruled by Spain. Iguaca, Iguaca. The parrots called when red-tailed hawks chased them in the treetops. The parrots flocked together to protect themselves from the hawks. For centuries, people from other countries in Europe tried to capture Puerto Rico. These countries wanted to control the deep harbor at San Juan, the capital city, where merchant ships and warships could be launched. The Boricuas protected their island. Starting in 1539, they built a fort that grew and grew until its walls were 18 feet, or 5.5 meters thick. For hundreds of years, no country was able to take Puerto Rico away from Spain. Iguaca, Iguaca. The parrots called when they found that their nesting holes had been invaded by creatures brought to the island by settlers. Black rats from the settlers' ships climbed the tall trees and ate the parrots' eggs. Honeybees that had escaped from hives swarmed into the parrots' nests. In 1898, the United States declared war on Spain. The war was really about Cuba, another of Spain's colonies, but the fighting spilled over into Puerto Rico. Thousands of American soldiers landed on the island and began battling Spanish troops. Spain lost the war and lost control of Puerto Rico. The island became a territory of the United States, and in 1917, Puerto Ricans became U.S. citizens. Iguaca, Iguaca. The parrots called as the forests where they made their nests were cut down. The parrots began to disappear from places where they had flown for millions of years. By 1937, there were only about 2,000 Puerto Rican parrots in the Lupillo Mountains to the east. A few years later, the parrots were living in just one place, El Yunque, a tropical rainforest in those mountains. After Puerto Ricans gained American citizenship, many of them moved to the United States. Those who stayed in rural parts on the island built houses and farms in the areas where parrots had once lived. Many of the parrots' tall oak trees were made into charcoal to use for cooking fires, and people still hunted and trapped the parrots. In the 1950s, birds called pearly-eyed thrashers moved into the rainforest and tried to steal the parrots' nesting holes. Like clever thieves, these birds enter places where other birds are struggling to live and compete with them for nest sites. The parrots fought the thrashers, jabbing at them with their sharp beaks and defending their nests with harsh cries. But the parrots now had too many enemies and too few trees. The flock became smaller and smaller. By 1954, there were only 200 parrots left. Puerto Ricans elected their first governor, and the island became a U.S. Commonwealth, not a state, not an independent nation, but something in between. The people argued, should their island remain a commonwealth? Should it be a state? Should it be independent of the United States? Everyone had a different idea, but all were proud to say, Yo soy Boricua, I am Puerto Rican. The flock of Puerto Rican parrots became even smaller. By 1967, only 24 parrots lived in El Yunque. Iguaca, Iguaca. The parrots called as they looked for some place. Any place, to find food and nesting holes for their chicks. Puerto Ricans looked up and saw that their Iguacas were almost gone. People had nearly caused the parrots to become extinct. Now people started to help the parrots stay alive. In 1968, the governments of the United States and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico worked together to create the Puerto Rican Parrot Recovery Program. Its goal was to save and protect the parrots. The first part of the plan was to create an aviary, a safe place for parrots to live and raise chicks. Parrots squawked as scientists with long-handled nets gently lifted eggs and chicks from their nesting holes. The scientists always left at least one egg or chick in each nest so some birds could continue living in the wild. In 1973, Luquillo Aviary opened in El Yunque. Incubators in the aviary kept the eggs warm. The Puerto Rican parrots raised in captivity had no experience as parents, so Hispaniolan parrots helped raise the chicks. These parrots come from the nearby island of Hispaniola. They are like cousins of Puerto Rican parrots, but are not as rare. Once, hundreds of thousands of Puerto Rican parrots flew over the island. By 1975, only 13 parrots were left in the rainforest. The worried scientists built special nesting boxes and put them in trees in areas where the parrots were likely to nest. The parrots inspected the nesting boxes and then moved in. These nesting boxes were deep and dark, like the nesting holes Puerto Rican parrots find in the wild. A bird sitting at the top of the box could not see all the way to the bottom. Purely eyed thrashers like to see the bottoms of their nests, so the thrashers left the parrots' nesting boxes alone. Wild parrots squawked as scientists gently placed chicks from the aviary in their nests so the chicks could learn how to live in the wild. In 1979, the very first chick raised in the aviary flapped out of a wild nest into the rainforest. The scientists worked hard to keep the parrots healthy, both the captive and the wild birds. One chick was rescued from the wild after its wings were badly damaged by gooey slime inside its nest. The scientists rebuilt the baby parrot's wings using old discarded parrot feathers, pins, and glue. Then they watched the parrot use its new wings to fly for the first time. By the end of 1979, there were 15 captive parrots. Most had come from eggs and chicks taken from wild nests to the aviary. Hurricane Hugo roared through the treetops of Puerto Rico in 1989. Iguaca, Iguaca, the parrots called as the winds blew down many of their tall trees. The hurricane wiped out crops and wrecked buildings and homes. In the aviary, the scientists worried about all the parrots. What if another bad hurricane blew down more trees? What if the aviary was damaged? Iguaca, Iguaca. A group of parrots squawked as scientists moved them from Luquillo Aviary to a new aviary in Rio Abajo Forest. This forest is less humid than El Yunque, and many parrots had once lived there. Now there were two safe places for captive parrots to live and raise chicks. Rio Abajo Aviary opened in 1993. It had some challenges. Thunderstorms sometimes caused the incubators to lose power. The scientists found generators that kept the power flowing to the incubators. The scientists also tried some new ideas. They kept more aggressive pairs of parrots away from gentler ones, so the gentler birds would not be frightened. They also caged young parrots with adults, so the birds could see how adult parrots behave. The number of parrots in the aviary grew. By 1999, Rio Abajo Aviary had 54 Puerto Rican parrots. The recovery program was ready for the next part of its plan, releasing adult parrots raised in captivity into the wild. In 2000, 10 captive bred parrots were released in El Yunque. It was late spring. The wild chicks had already flown from their nests, and the wild adults were still nearby, where the captive bred parrots could see them and join them. Iguaca, iguaca. The parrots called as they flew with the newcomers and searched for food. The captive-bred parrots had been trained to find food and avoid hawks, but many were caught by hawks anyway. So before the next 16 parrots were released in 2001, they were given extra training. They heard a hawk's whistle as the cutout shape of a hawk was passed over their cages. They watched a trained hawk attack a Hispaniolan parrot that was wearing a protective leather jacket. In time, the parrots learned to stay still or hide if a hawk was nearby. When these parrots were released, more of them survived in the wild. The scientists were ready to create a second wild flock. In 2006, 22 captive-bred parrots were released in Rio Abajo forest. The newly released birds formed pairs, found nesting boxes, and raised their chicks. Dozens of parrots have been released in Rio Abajo since then, and they have begun to spread out through the forest. If you look up from the forest, and you are very lucky, you might catch the bright blue flashes of flight feathers. These are Puerto Rican parrots. They lived on this island for millions of years, and then they nearly vanished from the earth forever. But they are flying over Puerto Rico still, calling Iguaca, Iguaca.
Oopsie. So, today when you're reading independently, check if your book has dedication or acknowledgments page. Remember, you should be reading at least 20 minutes on Raz Kids and then completing your reading response as well. Make sure you use proper capitalization and punctuation. All right, readers, I'll see you next time. Bye.